meeting. Dave, could we do the call of the meeting? Mr. Genowine? Here. Mr. Crandall? Here. Mr. Mahoney? Here. Simcoe, here. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening? Nothing, we good there? Okay. How about the approval of the minutes for November 20th? Any questions? I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Call roll, Mr. Genowine.
I'm going to abstain, I was not present.
Hey, Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney? Yes. Hearing of the public for agenda items, except for zoning, because I think we'll have our zoning hearing at 6 o'clock this evening, so. Is there anybody that's, I see Joe on here, and then, forgive me here, Troy Barman, you're for the zoning, right, Troy? Walt, I think, thank you for your pictures. And then Ryan Hirsch, sorry if I don't say that properly. Hirschenfelter? You're part of this zoning? Okay. With that being said, we'll move on to, again, zoning's at 6, so we'll go into the road department. Rob? Do you have anything to add?
Anything to add?
I don't.
Oh, well,
Keep working hard at it, what you're doing there.
you're in pretty good shape, aren't you? Well, you don't want to say
Hasn't
that.
been through my neighborhood.
Knock on wood.
Hey, Rob, I do have one question. Dave Walker had called earlier today. Does they have one more round over there off of King Road, Spring Forest?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I told him. I thought there's 3 rounds, so they've done 2.
Well, we've actually done 5, but
In Spring Forest?
yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, not that everybody has leaves out when we come by, but
Okay, I told him we got another one coming, so.
yeah, the
all right.
final one started 1st of December, and there's only a few zones that have been completed since then, so.
Okay.
Most of the township's gonna get one last round.
Great, thanks. Fire department? You got anything, Mike?
You go far?
How about the police department? Paul, you got anything?
No.
Okay. John, we're on the administrator.
Yes, once we have our review for a request for a new liquor permit at 5201 Monroe Street, units 6 and 7. This is the Beverly Hills Plaza at the back. It's a request for a new liquor permit. Neither the police or fire have any objections to it. Once again, it's one of those where if we have no objections, we take no action.
All right. Fiscal officer.
Yes, we've got a fiscal monthly report for October. And while he's getting it up there, I can mention that given the time of the year, most of our income has been received. We've got a little bit coming in, I believe, in the fire department and a little bit in the general fund, but it's really not much to really speak of. We're at about 100% in all the departments, a little bit higher, I think, in the police department. And as far as our expenditures go, we're at 10 months, and we'd probably be at 83% would be the standard mean, and we're below that each one of our departments. Income is where it was expected to be, and our expenditures, once again, are below what they're expected to be. So I think the departments are doing a good job on trying to drive down, our expenses, because we know that our income is pretty well fixed. I mean, we can't do much to generate more income, but what we can do is try to control our expenses, and we're working hard to do that. And so, unfortunately, it's not up there right now, but that's basically the report. For some reason, it's not coming up there.
She's good.
Oh, yes. Oh. There we go. I think you can see on the top line there, 83% would be our standard for expenses, and you can see down the mid-right, section on our expenditures, we're below that in each one of our departments. We're actually doing very well on our expenditures, as I mentioned. But we've got 2 more months to go, and so we're keeping an eye on it.
Okay.
If there are any questions, I've got some resolutions, a number of them. Resolution 18-148, and what that is, that pertains to passing our 2019 appropriations formally. This basically lays out our expenditures that we are going to be making, and we start placing them in various categories to try to, monitor our spending, and we got to send this down to the auditor's office so that they keep track of these things too. They're watching us too. So I would need a motion to pass this resolution.
I'll move Resolution 18-148, Township Annual Appropriations.
Second?
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And then resolution, the next resolution that we have is Resolution 152. No, I'm sorry,
152.
I think you're right.
which one is it?
You got it right.
Okay, 152, and that's a transfer of funds, and these are where we're having some, pertains to year-end interfund transfers within the various funds. We're moving monies around within a particular department where we're running a little short in some account, we have monies extra in other accounts, we're moving that money around within the department. You can see they're all kind of smaller sums, generally just kind of keeping our budget balanced. If we don't do that, then we can't write checks in certain accounts, and so that's why we move that money around to enable us to write checks.
I'll offer resolution 18-153, the transfer of funds. Excuse me, 52. Thanks, John.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
And next we have resolution 18-153, and that pertains to interfund transfers, again, between the general fund and the police department for monies to transfer to the police department. We had a sale of an abandoned vehicle, and it's $200,000 here. There's $200 and some dollars. I'll need a motion and a resolution on
I'll move Resolution 18-153, Transfer of Funds.
Second.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And we have resolution 18-154, and it's approval of a payment on a then and now purchase certificate, and that has to do with doing advertising in the Blade in our search for our administrator. Of course, we hadn't budgeted for that, so we're moving money around to cover that.
Is it staying in the same department?
Yes, yes.
I'll move Resolution 18-154, approve payment of then and now purchase certificate.
Second.
Okay. Call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
And lastly, I have resolution 18-155, and that's township appropriation of unencumbered balance, and what that has to do is, you see it's basically for cost allocation of the roads and bridge fund, and you can see the resolution up there. Again, these are smaller numbers, just moving them around toward the end of the year.
Yeah. I'll offer resolution 18-155, township appropriation of encumbered balance.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any open discussion amongst the board here? And then,
Well, excuse me, but we have a decision the trustees can make. We can have the hearing of the public. We have 20 minutes to 6 o'clock. Or we could also go into executive session. I think that will only take about a couple minutes.
just so these guys can get home for dinner, why don't we have the discussion for the non-agenda items, because the zoning's still at 6.
Right.
So, how about we do that? Okay. So, and not that you folks that are here for the zoning thing, I don't mean that in a bad way, just, it'd be, that's at 6 o'clock, that's the known, so. All right, so just going in no particular order, I guess I will go in order. Joe, you're signed in for some non-agenda items you'd like to discuss this evening? Please, and Joe, if you don't mind, just for the record, just your name and address, so we have it on tape for you.
Sure, thank you. My name is Joe Verkenes, V as in Victor, Erkennes. Some of you may have seen the article in the Blade that featured me. I didn't expect to become a star overnight because of this, but when I received the letter for annexation, I live in the Meadows subdivision of my home. That night, my wife and I were attending the St. Francis presidential ball, and we all were looking around the tables at other people that were nearby us and saw that people were from Country Walk were there, and they got letters, and people in the Parkland got letters saying that we were going to be annexed. It was the same letter. It was a very aggressively written legalese letter saying that we needed to sign such a letter within about, we all got it the Saturday before Thanksgiving, interesting timing, and that we needed to return that in about a week and a half. None of any of the people that I've talked to since expected annexation or understood why. Since then, we've done a lot of research, and I've learned a lot about this process and covenants and things that we knew nothing about. So I guess what I wanted to do today is just read into the record and read for the audience a statement that I made last night to lead it to the Sylvania City Council, if that's okay?
Please.
So this is going to be it's going to be directed to the council, so this is, I didn't change it up for the meeting tonight, I didn't have time, I had to deal with my day job. So this was the statement I made yesterday, December 3rd, 2018. I said, members of Sylvania City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight concerning the city's annexation efforts. I gave them my name and my address, and I said in a recent Blade article about the city's most recent forced annexation efforts, Councilman Hanem stated the following, quote, "For the vast majority of people, there are significant benefits to coming to the city. For the city, annexation allows its services to go to city residents and gives everyone a clear definition of what and who the city includes." And I directed my comments to Mr. Hanem and said, your comments do not really apply to residents who live in the Meadows, Parklands, and Country Walk subdivisions, which are ones that are the target of the city of Sylvania's latest forced annexation efforts that began with letters received by residents in those subdivisions just before Thanksgiving. How convenient that they arrived when intention levels are lower prior to a busy holiday. In addition, the comment of Law Director Leslie Brining that someone who makes $40,000 a year would pay less than taxes due to annexation are misleading. You know the properties you are targeting. You know the incomes required to live in those subdivisions are much higher than that. And you know how much money the city will make by forcing people to double, triple, quadruple, or pay 5 times what they are currently paying in property taxes for, in our opinion, the same services. These comments made by city officials are disingenuous, to put it mildly. You also know that we get all the services we desire in the township: excellent police protection, fire protection, leaf pickup, snow removal, salting, the list goes on and on. I'm much happier with my private trash and recycling pickup than when I lived in the city, which I did about 8 years ago before moving to township, and I've moved again in the township, which is why I'm in this situation. It is less expensive and very flexible. I pick up the phone for unlimited green yard waste, oversized trash pickup whenever I want it. I also don't have to worry about any assessments being forced on my subdivision for sidewalks and streetlights that we currently don't have or want. I got into a little bit of a personal story about our situation. Because our mother-in-law now lives with us after the sudden passing of my father-in-law, we needed a larger home, so we bought in township to avoid a 1.5% income tax. We've since, after 4 years, moved 3 months ago in the township. We knew that in the township we would get the services we need, and we could set that money aside for our kids' Catholic school tuition and their future college. We already pay close to $3,000 per year in taxes for Sylvania schools, and we are happy to do so, even though we have chosen a faith-based education for our children. My family and I love living in Sylvania Township. We chose to live there because we would get all the great services we need and pay reasonable taxes. If you annex us, my wife and I would go from paying $800 annually in property taxes to the township to paying $3,600 annually in income taxes to the city of Sylvania. That's an increase of 350%. Plus, we already pay among the highest water surcharges in the state of Ohio. We selected the meadows in the township because people told us it was safe from annexation. Over the last year, we went through a long, long process to sell our last house in Sylvania Township, buy new, and move in. 2 parents, 2 kids, a mother-in-law, and 2 dogs. It was not a fun ordeal. When we were not alerted at the closing on our home that this annexation could happen. Imagine my surprise when I showed up to sign up for water services and learned that in order to get water service, I would be forced to quote-unquote cooperate should the city ever wish to annex my property. What was I supposed to do at that point? Go without water? Move back to my old Sylvania Township home with Lucas County water? Not possible. I had just sold my home. Your process for this forceful annexation effort is shameful. Rather than mailing a threatening letter to unsuspecting people, why not hold some public meetings to inform people whose property you are targeting and allow them to ask questions? Why not just inquire as to whether or not people would be interested in annexation? The conduct of the city officials in this ordeal is the type that gives public officials a bad name. Why? Because City of Sylvania officials know full well that the majority of the people in these homes do not want to be annexed, but they are rule-following citizens who do not wish to enter into litigation with a city who will throw thousands of citizens' tax dollars at a project that means they can grab many thousands more tax dollars from non-citizens. And also because you figured you could slip the annexation petition through before a holiday with a limited deadline in terms of when we could turn it back in and without much of a fight. Well, you thought wrong. We've organized our opposition efforts quickly, and they continue to grow. We do not want to be annexed against our will, and we will not be quiet. So after that meeting, they basically allowed me to read that into the record and did not offer any comment whatsoever and returned to their regular agenda, although I happen to know one of the councilmen, Mr. Mark Lutke, very well through the years and working with him. I wasn't going to read this yesterday. I was just going to observe, and he kind of coaxed me in and said, I think you need to read it because the communication about this was pretty poor. So I did it, and then as I was chatting with him afterwards, and they went into closed session, I spoke with the Blade reporter for a little while outside. We came back in, and after the meeting, I had some conversations with this Councilman Hanem, whose demeanor to me was fairly unacceptable. He was pretty aggressive in stating that I should have known this, we all should have known this, everybody knows this. You should be worrying about suing your realtor as opposed to focusing on coming and talking to them. So essentially I felt like he was blaming us because we didn't understand this. And my response to him was, I don't know of anybody that knew that these quote-unquote covenants were somewhere and within the agreement from the developer from 1987 when my house was built. I would have chosen to probably stay in the part of Sylvania Township that had the Lucas County water, as opposed to move somewhere where I knew I would be annexed. And he continued with the line of thought that we're going to get all these great services until I pretty much said to him, you know what this is about. This is about the tax dollars, and he so much as admitted that at that point. So that's where we left it. He got in his car and took off. I'm going to continue to fight the good fight and see where we can go from here, which I don't know if it's going to be an easy fight, but I'm game for it.
Well, Joe, thank you, by the way, for taking the lead, and we appreciate the communication.
Thank you.
Keeping us posted on things. Just one thing that come to mind here is, where you live, you're paying 25% surcharge for your water.
Right.
And you live in the township. And you already have water that you're paying into the city. And why would they force you for nothing more than a tax grab if that's what it is? Because you're paying the water bills that they're assuming was the cost for putting those lines in.
Right.
It's really disappointing.
And the reception to inquiries, I've talked to a couple of the HOA presidents whose phone calls were not received repeatedly, were not returned. My phone calls were not returned. The only reason I got in there to talk to somebody the first day after I got the letter, which was on a Saturday, I went on a Monday, talked to somebody who didn't know anything about it at the front desk. Then I talked to the utilities manager who said, oh, well, that, you gotta, let me see if I can find Leslie. Leslie came in to chat with me and gave me the same line of reasoning. Oh, you're probably gonna save some money. And then when I said, you know these subdivisions? She said, yeah, well, for people that have higher incomes, you're probably gonna end up paying. So, since then, I've filed public records requests for a number of things, and I had to call and email multiple times. It took them about 2 weeks to get back to me. They finally gave me the list of the homes that they're targeting, which I've subsequently posted, just the addresses onto that Sylvania taxpayers page, as well as to my own Facebook page, and provided them to the trustees as well as the media. There was actually a story on, somebody just texted me the link at 5:30, Channel 13 did a story. They interviewed me tonight for Channel 11. It was interesting, the reporter for Channel 11 gave me the impression that she got the same response from Doug Hyman that I got. And so I didn't even have to coax that out of her, she volunteered that to me. So, and I've heard from several other folks in the Sylvania administration that that's his MO, which is fine. I just didn't expect it to be treated like that from a city councilman.
Well, what we can do, Joe, is be as supportive as we can, and, you know, my suggestion is we put a resolution on next meeting against this, if the board, I'm prepared to vote on that at our next meeting, and just let them know that we're do what we can, but we're dead serious about wanting to help you guys as much as we can here. I know you're meeting with Mr. Crandall tomorrow night, and we'll just keep communicating. I think that's the key when we deal with a difficult situation like this, so.
And I did have a nice conversation. I reached out to Attorney Kevin Ferguson, who handled an annexation case.
Sylvania Avenue and Farmbrook.
Yeah,
Yes.
Farmbrook, and they won that case.
They did.
The way they won it was that was related to sewer service, which was being provided by Sylvania, which was in an agreement with the city of Toledo. And he said they won that case because there was like a third-party agreement where Toledo said, we'll provide the service if you don't annex, use it as a means to annex. So I've also asked for a public records request for two other things. One of them is that water contract with the city of Toledo.
Very good.
To see if there's anything in there. And Kevin said, just keep him in the loop. I don't know if maybe we could retain him at some point. I've got to cross those bridges when we come to it. The other public records request I made is any conversation between a long list of individuals who may have had conversations via email about their strategy here, because that's the one thing I can't figure out. There's no public record of any of this. And council, I think, was just as surprised as you guys were that we received these letters. So
Yeah.
I don't think, and I spoke to a council member earlier today who said that I kind of asked them for their reaction, and their reaction was that they weren't happy with how the communication was handled to these homeowners. So I think we're winning some of the public relations battles here early by holding their feet to the fire about how they've handled this situation.
Hey, Joe, can I interrupt with John Zeitler? Hey, John Zeitler? Yes. Can you find out, did the city of Sylvania apply for any government monies for those water lines? Is there a way we can find that out? Maybe state or federal? Because that, you know, that may make things a little more interesting, too.
Sure.
And I did receive an interesting
When you get a
letter
chance.
from, I got home Friday, and there was a letter, how often do you get a typed-up written letter in the mail? But it was from a township trustee in Ottawa County, who referred me to a couple of house bills that are currently under
There's one
consideration.
down there now.
And one of them is about whether or not they receive state dollars. So if we could, and he gave me the representatives to call, I just haven't had a chance to.
There's one down there now, so maybe that's why they're turning up the heat on this, so. Anyways, Joe, thank you very much. Appreciate all your hard work on this.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
We did a comparison at a township average household income of $76,137. You'll pay about 11% more in the city. And we have these figures available. I want to thank the staff for putting this together. It also addresses trash and recycling. Every time there's an annexation, we obviously lose money on the real estate tax. And Mayberry, one of the recent ones, the figure from our staff is $50,000. Is that correct? I'm rounding some numbers. And we looked at, can we cut back on the police? No, we can't. We're still growing. Can we cut back on the road department? No, we're still getting more miles. And our road department had a serious cut, how many years ago, Rob?
2012.
So we're struggling here, and I think it's time. I would support your resolution, Neil, but I would also ask the administration to get back to us. I think there's some other things we could do. I don't want to discuss it this evening. We're here to make decisions. But, John, I think something we should look into, when somebody comes to us for rezoning, especially commercial, and they're still in the township, but we know they're in their water district, I think we got to start saying, wait a minute. As soon as that gets approved, they're going to be in here for annexation. And I don't know if it's legal, and I don't need an opinion tonight, John, but I'd like to look in, could we have an agreement with the property owner to not annex for a period of years? It would kind of be the reverse of what they're doing with the water. I don't know the legality. I do know about the water bill, the House bill, and it looks like that's going to die in lame duck. At least that's the latest information. So I think we should be thinking ahead about getting that reintroduced the next year. That's my only comments. Thank you, Joe, for your...
One last thing, Joe, is I'm in the title insurance business, and I see closings every day. Nobody gets the declarations. You push it far enough, the judge may look at that and say the consumer's been hurt, because you don't, every day, nobody goes back to the root of the property and look and see what's on here. And that's what upsets me the most about this, is that you cannot, the average person doesn't know any different. And we don't do it. And typically, the consumer doesn't know. They get a piece of title work, they don't even know why they're in our building, other than they're getting keys and they paid a bunch of money. They don't get the paperwork, they don't get it. And for Doug to say that's kind of disappointing too, because you can't, the average consumer doesn't know. And that's what's so frustrating for me.
When I was speaking to Kevin Ferguson, who handled that case, I asked him that question. I said, if I would have had a lawyer with me at my closing, would they have found that? And he said, you would have had to have a really...
You gotta go back to the root. You gotta go back to the beginning. That's the deal. They keep putting, if they had gone and annexed everything up front, everybody knows it's a straight shot, but you start coming back 15, 20 years later and start getting your grab. It's just disappointing.
I had for him was, what's the point of the petitions? Because I wanted him to tell me what the next step was. And I said, is that just you guys trying to be nice and getting residents to sign them? Because we also had to sign the water agreement, which says the same thing. And his attitude was, if we don't get, the people that don't sign them, we'll eventually sue you individually.
Just keep the faith.
Neil?
Yeah.
John, do you think you could have some recommendations for us by the next meeting, along with this resolution?
I can have the resolution, and I'll have hopefully the answers for the state, if there's any state and federal funding involved in the
Well, I
city.
want more than that. I'd also like to check the legality
Of the
rezoning.
I'll work with John Barrett.
I've got some other ideas, but we don't need to do it this evening, but I'd like to talk to you about it.
Okay.
And I think it would be good when we consider Neil's resolution, that we have some actual actions that we could take in addition to that.
Okay.
Does the county commissioners have the ultimate approval on this?
Everything goes down to
We sent
the...
letters to them stating our objection to
Right,
it.
and they actually, maybe a year or two ago, when we had a annexation down there, and I was down there, they said one thing that would help would be an actual resolution from the trustees opposing, what you're doing is opposing the annexation. I don't know if, it would help, that's just, I can't. But they're the ones that are the ultimate authority to allow it or disallow it.
Well, sometimes, John, it's hard to oppose when you have 50% of the people that want to be in, but this case is very similar to Mayberry, where they cut a deal there, got to 50% and then they brought in everybody in the area, it's even worse. To me, that's not the intent of the law, but it's hard for us, we can oppose it, but if 50% want to be in, I think we know what that is.
I think that's a different scenario than what we're talking
But
about.
I believe Mayberry was a different scenario, and now we got another case here. And I think those are really ill-advised.
Wesley Evans?
Yes.
Hi, Wes.
Hello, first of all, thank you for doing your job.
Yeah, hey, Wes, sorry, do you mind just coming up, just introducing yourself?
All I wanted to say is I think that Joe made all points, and with everything said by the council meeting with John Crandall, I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it very much. James Crosby,
Yes.
come on up.
Okay, I will. I understand you're getting to just plot zoning issues, but
But we can postpone, as long as we.
Absolutely. Let's, just your name and address.
James Crosby, 4500 block of Westbourne Road. I was assigned in to speak tonight about the surprise annexation I read about in the newspaper. I'm glad that the issue's already been brought forward. Total surprise, and it looks like a thing that was struck with the developer when they put this whole plan together, and now the residents are being surprised. I was wondering what the financial impact would be if this annexation is successful. Hopefully it will not be. And I want to know at what point in time you guys became aware, and are there any other properties, residents, who would be at risk in future annexation attempts? Because I'm sure all the people in Country Walk and the other affected neighborhoods were not aware of it, and were totally surprised until they received their letters. I was wondering what other residents in the township might receive such letters, and if there's a way to cipher out such things.
Good questions.
There's a Sylvania City Water District that actually extends beyond the boundaries of the city of Sylvania. Anybody in that city of Sylvania Water District could be subject to annexation if they have water. If they sign the various agreements at the time and that I don't know, but those are the people that are at risk, are the people that are in the city of Sylvania Water District, the township residents, but the city of Sylvania Water District goes beyond the city limits in certain areas. So those are the ones that would be at risk.
so it's a good portion, but is that information available somewhere?
I can show you the boundary, I have a map that shows the boundary of the city of Sylvania Water District.
I would appreciate seeing that at some point.
Sure.
John, wouldn't you be able, well, I'm not sure we know exactly what they're doing right now. We have 3 or 4 subdivisions, but could you take a cut or a guess at how much revenue will...
I haven't even looked at
It'd have to be a
it.
shot, because, Bud, you need the commercial acreage, and you need the residential, and we're not sure. I've heard 3 or 4 subdivisions. It's hard for us to know.
I've got a
And
list, there's a list.
There might be a way, I think the auditor's office can segregate areas like the meadows or the woodlands, and could give me a value, if I get a valuation of the area, the household valuation, I could then figure out what we'd be losing in the police tax, the road tax, income I won't know, so what they'll be paying to the city of Sylvania. But I can, if I can get that information, I can calculate what the township will be losing in tax dollars.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The petition that the letter they gave us was incomplete, and I didn't want to alert them as such, because, down the road, they gave me something incomplete, maybe I'd have a leg to stand on, but the petition says, the undersigned petitioners in the premises and being the majority of the owners of real estate in the following described territory within the county of Lucas, state of Ohio, contiguous to the city of Sylvania, to wit, see attached Exhibit A, which was not provided in the document. And then it says, an accurate map of which territory is hereby attached respectfully petition that the above described territory be annexed to the city of Sylvania. The total acreage which petitioners request be annexed to the city of Sylvania is blank acres. So they want you to sign a petition, but you're signing something that's not.
They'll just go ahead and send it,
Take that information, John, and give us an accurate answer.
I appreciate the efforts here, and I would encourage you to place on the agenda, on the upcoming regular meeting, discussion about this annexation, to get the input of the residents affected directly and other feelings of the other residents within the township. I would guess that that meeting would be as well attended as some recent discussions about noise ordinance resolutions, which was to the pleasure, chagrin to whoever might have been involved with those. And not to take up anybody's more time, I was just curious as to noise troubles within the township. Have they persisted? Have this been resolved? Is there continuing to be a pressing need to pass noise ordinance resolution?
We have one in place, that's what's been approved, the one that's been in place from the
So
beginning.
that has persisted in being effective?
Yeah,
Good to hear.
yeah, thanks. Bill Berry, please. Bill, come on up. Hi, Bill.
Hi. Just briefly,
Just if you don't mind, sorry.
yeah, Bill Berry, I'm on the board of the Meadows, and first of all, thanks to Joe and to Les here. My question realistically is that having gone through, how should I say, an annexation down near Akron, Ohio, where basically I was in a township, and we were told, based on a water agreement, that our costs and our facilities would be much improved. It actually we ended up paying around about 35% more afterwards. What my concern is that when the letter was issued, I actually had 5 or 6 of the people who received the letter come to my door asking me about it. First of all, I didn't know nothing about it. But the concern was that when I phoned here, the response that the people had got was, this is nothing to do with us, it's to do with the city. And my concern is, from a trustee's point of view, is that when you have these 3 or 4 large neighbourhoods within the township, and the point raised in terms of spending and in terms of taxes, would impact the rest of the township if they were removed. And what I'm looking for is to see what the township is going to do to support these 3 or 4 areas. Taking a laissez-faire, hands-off approach, I can't understand that. And that's what my concern is, gentlemen, that there needs to be a clear stipulation that the trustees and the administration of the township will do their best to actually look at what the views are and the impact, not just to Meadows, but to the rest of the township. Because I totally agree, we've got fantastic police force, fantastic fire brigade, fantastic facilities.
Thank you.
We don't need any more. But my concern is the trustees and the administration taking a hands-off and saying, well, you're just going to have to handle it yourself. If we need to, we will obviously go ahead and get our own lawyers and attorneys to fight it. But we would much prefer to actually do it with the whole backing of the township administration and trustees. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Well, I'd like to address that. First of all, when most annexations, people sign and they want to go in the city. And we work close with the city, especially the fire department. We do fire for the city, the township. And I personally encourage us to work together, especially when one unit can do it cheaper than the other unit. So when you say Sylvania, to me, it's not township against city, it's the school district that I look at.
Sure.
I think there might be a misinterpretation. Some of the calls I got, I don't know about the front desk. The first question is what is the city doing? And I would have responded, we don't know. They usually, we hear a rumor, we get some free notice, and I really think the city failed to let us know. They should have realized we're going to get the calls. And we can't tell you what they're doing. We still don't know. But we are catching up, and we certainly, at least personally, I intend to. I don't think forcing people from any jurisdiction to another against their will, I just don't think, I can tell you, I don't agree with that. And as one trustee, I certainly have reached out to help you. And when you say to me, what are they doing and what's their intent?
So maybe it was the question. I think the point is that within the meadows, there's only a small percentage, I believe, Joe, that have actually received that letter, right? So the question I've got is, if those 10 people out of 130 homeowners have received a letter, and how does the process work? If those 10 people did sign them, how does that impact 120 other homes within the meadows?
My guess, and I can tell you, we don't know exactly yet what the city's doing, but my guess is, if you got a letter, there's some problem with your title work. And I'll turn that to Neil. But that's my guess. I don't know. And we're guessing.
Right. All of the people round about where I live in Whispering Oak, most of them have not received a letter. Right? So there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason whether it was in 2006, 2015, Wes bought it 2 years ago, maybe in 2016. So there doesn't seem to be any logical stipulation as to how they're going about it.
My only point is I think the trustees and administration certainly are concerned about forced annexation.
Okay. Thank you.
Does the joint economic development agreement we have with the city inhibit us from protesting this?
No, we have.
It's just a memorandum.
Not that I know of. No, it's not an agreement, it's a memorandum. It has no time limit.
Obviously, it doesn't work very well.
No, I would say it doesn't work. It says right, well, I don't want to get into detail.
All right.
Yeah, so all we're asking for is full support and the utilization of the resources of the administration, which you have requested, and we appreciate that, because the more information that we have, the better we are in a position to actually push back on anything that the other people doesn't want. Thank you.
Thanks. Sure. I did run some number, Bill, Joe, I can make copies, but I'll make sure these are the numbers I got for you for the difference, the water bills and what your surcharges are, so. Okay, if anybody doesn't want to listen to zoning, they're more than welcome to go, because we're about to talk about zoning, so. Okay, thank you for the folks that were here that want to leave. Wait, not you guys. You guys sit down. We're not done yet. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
This is not as boring as it looks.
All right. Hi, Carlene.
Good evening. All right, to start off, this is a zone request for the Oakleaf Village property and the property next to it, which was the former Box L Industries. The request for the C2 to R5 PUD for 4230 is the Box L property, and then the R4 residential to R5 is at 4220, which is the existing property that Oakleaf has with the Grove. They're going to just even out the zoning so that it's all R5 PUD. The zone change is going to combine the property. It will be almost 12 full acres. A companion case was approved for a conditional use from it. It will be for the construction of a 54-unit, 4-story senior living apartment, and that was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals on Monday, November 5th. Several variances were given as well to keep it in line with the zoning. The new facility will be complementary to the existing residential care facilities that are already there. The surrounding land use would include a 3-story multifamily residential facility that's to the north, which is the Wellington House. There is a 3-story medical office to the south. The Boy Scout Camp Mayaconda is there to the east, and commercial and medical offices exist to the west. The area has grown and changed over the years and has developed predominantly into commercial and multifamily uses, and this proposal is consistent with the neighboring characteristics. The land use plan that was adopted in 2018 recommends this area for high density, and the senior apartment complex is very complementary to the existing facility and the area. The zone change is anticipated to have little or no adverse impact on the surrounding properties. It was supported by the Lucas County Plan Commission. I support it as well in our department. I think that it will be a complement to the area. I think that it is a well-designed building that is going up, and I would make my recommendation for you to make the zone change.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open a public hearing for the zone change request from C2 General Commercial to R5 Residential Plan Unit Development. Parcel number 78-21164. I guess we'll start with if anybody would like to speak on behalf of the project, and then we'll ask folks that would like to speak not on behalf of the project. So, and we'll just go down the list. So first, Troy Barman, if you could.
I'll let you talk first.
Okay, great. Come on up. Okay, and you are, please?
Absolutely. Ryan Herkenrother with Oakleaf Village.
Hi, Ryan.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me tonight and for all the staff time and the zoning board's time to date. Thank you on behalf of Oakleaf. We've been in Sylvania roughly since 1985 in one form or another. Our sponsor company, Wallach, is a Central Ohio-based company, about 52 years old, and we actually constructed the Wellington, and as part of the original Oakleaf Village construction. Back then, it was a PUD, kind of going back to the future, requesting a PUD again here tonight. 2013, we expanded with the Grove Memory Care. It's been a big success for us, really innovative way of delivering memory care, in that we have 4 distinct neighborhoods in that new building that cater to residents' cognitive abilities and a range within that building to really specifically hone in on activities, programming, and care depending on resident need. In our main building, Oakleaf Village, we serve residents across independent and assisted living needs, and at both a market rate and a Medicaid assisted living waiver, public reimbursement rate. So we're serving multiple income ranges and physical care needs. But to give you an idea, our average age in that building is about 83 for the folks that live with us. Very excited about the 54-unit building that's before you tonight, requesting the zone change for. Really what we're trying to do here, thank you for the elevation there. Really what we're trying to do is cater to a younger senior, probably in their mid-70s, still very independent in their daily life, but are preparing themselves for that next step, and wanting the security and the ability to age in place and to have care brought to them at a future time when it's needed, make the move now, downsize, get that life stage behind them, and prepare themselves for a day when they need care. We do intend to license this building as a residential care facility. That's why the conditional use was approved and requested from the planning boards. That would license it just as the rest of the campus is with the Ohio Department of Health as a residential care facility. Carleen mentioned the 2018 land use plan. We feel that the density here, is appropriate with that plan. Trying to make the best out of, a fairly limited site and integrate it into the campus, and be consistent with the zoning code as it's written. So in a bit of somewhat regretful timing, at one of the zoning board meetings, we were notified that by our neighbor, Dr. Stoll, that we've had some either wayward visitors to the Oakleaf campus find their way into his parking lot, and we believe that is visitors of our New Grove Memory Care Building, family members, what have you. So of course, we agree with Dr. Stoll. This is unacceptable, frankly. So we're glad to work with him in whatever manner is appropriate to make sure that all visitors are ending up in our parking lot. Could be a case of just confusion or capacity, and if that is the case, we'd like to make some modifications to how we direct our staff and our visitors on the main campus to ensure that our visitors are getting where we want them, as close as possible to the front door of both the Grove and Oakleaf buildings. Happy to answer any questions. Troy Barman of Lewandowski Engineering is here for civil engineering support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Troy, do you have anything to add? Okay.
Troy, I'm pretty sure this is on county water, right? Am I correct? Do you know?
It's the city water, it's city water.
Yeah, but it's county service. It's beyond the Slovenia water.
It's county.
Not that that's an issue, I just,
City water.
after our previous conversation, that might be a standard question I have. Thank you.
Dr. Stoll,
Yes.
you're signed up if you'd like to come up and
Sure would.
please do.
Yep.
I do apologize for this gross, but I just left my office about 45 minutes ago.
All righty, first of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to talk to you.
Hey, Doc, do you mind just giving us your name and address?
Yes, Walter Stowell, 4206 North Holland, Sylvania Road. That's the piece of property right in the middle, surrounded by Oakleaf Village and the Grove. And I have kind of and I've discussed this already with, it was Mr. Sabo, I believe, of zoning, and Troy Barman, and we've always also had some conversations with Ryan and the executive director of the Grove as well. But it's kind of a serious concern, and that is parking. And I think Ryan alluded to that as well. But let me give a little background information, how serious this really is. About 27 years ago, I remodeled my office there, and I moved in here. And for about the first 24 years, I never had one complaint. Oakleaf Village, they were great neighbors, and I think the Wallet Company is a reputable company, and have no problems with them. About 3 years ago, they proposed a new structure, and it was a Grove, the Memory Center, I think they were going to call it the Alzheimer's Center, they changed that name. At that time, I came in here and I came to the meeting where they finally approved everything. And I talked to the architect, and I also believe I talked to the trustees as well. And at that time, my concern was two things. One was they wanted to get a little bit closer to the road, so they wanted the offset to go closer to the road because they were putting a patio area there. And I was concerned, would that impact my sign? As it turned out, it did not. My other concern was parking. And I discussed that, with the trustees briefly, but I did discuss it for a long period of time with the architect. And at that time, I expressed my concern about this. The architect assured me that they would provide adequate parking for the new construction for the Grove. Now, the Grove is a 36,000 square foot facility, okay, and they have, I believe, about 50 to 60 residents that are there, with a relatively dense staff that takes care of them. And I went along with it, and they said there would be no problems. They built the structure, and virtually from the time they built the structure, we started having more people parking in our lot. Not many at first, a few. They started encroaching on that. And I was wondering why. Why in the heck is this going on? It continued, and initially it was tolerable. And again, I consider them good neighbors, Oakleaf Village and the Wallet organization. They've always done very well with me. Over the past 6 months, that has increased radically. I have no idea why. It could be that they added more staff into the Grove facility, but now it's getting to the point where we frequently have cars coming in, parking, and the drivers of those cars go directly into the Grove. So that is a concern. The problem also with my office is that we have 11 parking spots. With my staff there and my hygienist, we usually require all of them. So when there's one per visitor that parks there, it takes and displaces a patient. We've had actually problems where we've had to park across the street at Liberty Square because we did not have a parking spot. So now we find that it is almost to the point of being intolerable. Why didn't we say something before? I'll tell you why. I wanted to be a good neighbor about this whole thing. But as I said, recently it's been getting to the point of being intolerable. The one problem I really have, and we're going to go over this a little bit later. Can you get my pictures up there? I've got some photographs. I'll show you what's going on. We've got some aerial photos, thanks to my son, who's an expert in satellite imagery. That's an aerial photo of Oakleaf in about 2011. And you'll notice the parking spaces out there. They had very nice parking spots, seemingly adequate. And as I said, for about 23 to 24 years, we never had a problem with anybody parking in our lot that would be going into Oakleaf Village. And we have a second one, if you want to, okay, that is the complex that they put up. That's the Grove, the Memory Center. That's a 36,000 square foot facility. And you can see my office is just to the top of that, slightly north of that. The proximity of my parking lot to the front door is about 50 feet. And it's directly from my parking lot. It really is not very far away. I was just curious why, if they promised me that they would provide adequate parking, we were having this parking problem all of a sudden. We went back to the aerial photos and we compared the two. When they built the Grove, it was such a large facility. They encroached on their existing parking. they wound up having to remove 23 parking spots to accommodate that building. When they took and rebuilt the parking there, and you can see their parking is straight up, it has a little circular area there, a turnabout, they added 27 parking spots. That's a gain, a net gain of 4 parking spots for that facility. So they not only had to accommodate everybody from Oakley Village, now they had to accommodate everyone, both the visitors and the employees of the Grove. That's what caused our problem. It was a parking problem. Now, I've walked back there and I've looked at that parking lot. That parking lot is often completely filled. I'm not saying it is all the time, but recently it seems to, the density of the parking has really increased there. So that might explain that problem. We looked at those aerial views. Okay. I did mention the 11 parking spots that I have available, and I have no extra parking spots there at all. Could we move on to the next slide there? This was last Tuesday, and fortunately, it was not a hygiene day. We didn't have a lot of patients scheduled. Well, for me, we did, but usually it's a lot busier when my hygienist is there. That occurred at about 11:30. And my receptionist was there. She came back and got me and said, Dr. Stowe, look what's going on. A truck pulled into our parking spot. That truck took up 3 spots. The driver got out and he walked into the front door of the Grove. That truck was there quite a while. And if you want to go on to the next slide, please. About 20 minutes to a half hour later, another car pulled in there. A lady got out of the car. And if you want to hit do the next one too, that's a picture of her car, and the next shot, that's a picture of her right by the tree, walking into the front door there of the Grove. She parked there, I don't know whether she was there a half hour or whatever, but this will give you an idea of what we're facing. Also, do you want to go on to the next slide now? These are the deterrents we used. We took and we let our grass grow back there, okay? Trying to keep people from walking through there. We put a sign up saying authorized vehicles only. The problem is, can you see where the golf cart is there? That golf cart is right by the entrance. Now that entrance, and you probably can't see the tree, the pine tree back there, but that entrance is 4.5 feet from my property line. Right there. And again, because of ease of entry, but I suspect that the reason that the visitors are not using the parking lot is because it's filled. And as a last resort, they're parking in my lot. Now, we were notified that they were planning the construction of a 54-unit apartment complex. And we took a look at that. And first of all, let me mention that I have absolutely nothing against this project. I think the Wallet Company is a great company, very reputable, and a lot of great integrity and everything else. And I've talked to Ryan, he's a very nice young man. I have no problems with this project. The only thing I'm concerned with is my best interest, and that is my parking. That's my livelihood. We also have another business on this property. It's called Vistar Technologies. And it's a company that started back in 1984. We produce personal lighting systems for doing surgical procedures. We sell our products all over the world. Probably the largest selling shield system in the United States right now is our system. It's called the Biomask. And we're selling these electronics as well. In the future, we plan on putting probably about a 24 to maybe 3,200 square foot facility right there. And along with parking going along, that's adjacent to the Grove. And when we do that, we're going to add more parking spots. And again, that probably will be a great overflow area from Oakley. But my main concern is that, first of all, they only gained 4 parking spots when they built the Grove. Okay. We looked at the parking that they propose for this new 54-unit apartment complex. And I looked at the site plan. I found 5 parking spots, no others. If they build this, which is about 60,000 square feet, and it's a PUD, so the density is like 21.8 residences per acre of land, and they increase that with a variance. The only place that the employees or the visitors can go for parking is right to the back of my property. And if that happens, that's radically going to increase the density of that parking. And you know darn well, if I'm having a problem right now, I'm going to have a real problem when they open that facility. And, that's one thing I would ask also, the developer, is how are they going to handle that situation? Are they planning any alternative parking there? And that's my concern.
Okay.
So it's a total of, essentially, of 9 parking spots when you're building the Grove and when you're building this 54-unit complex.
Troy, can we confirm, Troy, can we get you up here to confirm this parking with the doctor? I believe you, Doc, I just want to make sure we're...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
We're providing 60 parking spaces as part of the project. The 5 Walt is commenting on are 5 visitor spaces that are at the front of the new building. The others have detached garages, or we have 30 spaces as detached from the building. We have 24 spaces tucked into the first story of the building. So on a site plan, you may not pick them up right away, but I've got 2 copies of the site plan I can distribute.
I think we have it.
Yeah, we do. Hey, Ryan, while you're up, have you talked to Doctor about this parking issue? Where are we at with that?
This is submitted with the PUD. They're better than that version you have.
I don't get it.
Yeah, so as Walt mentioned, this is a very recent thing. In what he's vocalizing is recent. The 6-month period, I can't quite explain off the top of my head. I think I'd want to talk to my staff. The incidents with the photograph, our staff advised that we had an event that day, so they were taking some of the visitor spaces. And then one of the difficulties, I think one of the photos was taken around time of our shift change, so that's a hard time for us. You have staff coming in that need to park, and you have the staff that they're replacing still working in the communities, so you kind of have an overlap there, so it's always a tough time. What I'd like to suggest, and I ran this by the community, I'll give you copies here, is to post some visitor-only signage closer to the door, and I'll give you these. To basically post some signage that enforces that that's visitor-only, and then also dedicate some spaces and direct our staff, and we can control that better than we can control visitors, to park in a certain spot, and that would be tucked away by the dumpsters at the back of the Grove. I'm not at all uncompassionate to the fact that we're causing a problem. It sounds like we are. But in that area, I mean, there's a good 15 vacant spaces. And again, this is just coming to our attention in the past couple of weeks. So we strive to be good neighbors. We absolutely want to be. And, we'll figure it out. We're glad to work out a solution. But again, 60 parking spaces we're providing.
So would it make any sense, just talking here, Ryan, while I got you up here, like maybe some bushes you guys could maybe touch up along the side, or a fence of some sort?
Absolutely. I want to coordinate it with Dr. Stoll's plans, his expansion plans, but...
Okay. So you willing to work with him back on that?
I'm willing to work with him, but I have a couple comments.
Okay.
First of all, the 60 parking spots that Troy alluded to, those are actually not parking spots for the visitors or staff. Those are parking spots that are specifically dedicated to the residents. And there's one parking spot per resident. There are 2 driveways going into that complex. That cannot be used by staff, it can't be used by visitors. And also you only have 1 parking spot per, because you cannot park out in the driveway. That'll obstruct cars from going through there. That's not true. They've got 5 parking spots there. Now keep in mind, they're putting in a restaurant, a 2,100 square foot restaurant. And also they have some other administrative offices going in there as well. And, if you can fit 5 people, wait until the holidays come around, and you've got 1 parking spot, okay, dedicated parking spot per resident there. It's, far as I can see, it's not going to work very well. Also, the residents may have 2 cars. You're essentially, you cannot count the garages that they're putting up that are built specifically for the residences there as parking. It is not.
Right. My concern is your parking, not their
Yes.
parking. If they put elevators in, had cars on top of each other, if it's passed through the county, it's passed through. My issue with you is, I want your parking to be your parking.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Okay, and how they park their cars, I don't care.
Oh, I don't give a darn either.
Right, so I want to make sure that we guys get this figured out, and then, because you'll see it back, I know that.
And again, the problem right now, and we tolerated it. That's the reason I didn't call Ryan, I didn't call the wallet company. We tolerated this problem for a long time. I wanted to be a good neighbor. But recently, for some reason, as I said, last 6 months, year, it's been getting considerably worse. And that is my concern. For that, I figured, okay, we have the Grove, we're tolerating it. But now with this other complex, by the way, that other complex is about 50 feet from my property line. And it's running about, I believe, about 300 feet. And if you want to look at the site plan, I'm right across the driveway over there. And other than that, I think I'm just about done except for one thing, and that is the green zone, okay? The back of my lot, which is the eastern boundary line, and if you take a look at that, it's just to the right, just above, yeah, right there, okay. Now, when they put that parking lot in, that parking lot was put about 4.5 feet from my property line. And based on the R5 PUD requirements, you're required to have a green zone of 40 feet, and you cannot have anything there. You can't have a sidewalk or anything. I've got 4.5 feet, and I'm running about 180 feet between my property line and the parking lot. So I'm not real happy about that either. And I'm planning a building back there. So as I mentioned to Troy, I was very concerned about the setback requirements with R5 PUD. Apparently they reassured me that there would not be, that it would be 30 feet. And again, I'll accept that. Another thing with the PUD, with the R5 PUD, what's to stop them from putting up high-density structures around my property? They virtually have very little parking available. That's going to put more pressure on my parking lot as well. So, please consider that. But I'm certainly willing to work with the wallet company. And I think this project, the 54-unit luxury apartments that they're planning, it's a very smart decision on their part. And it has great synergies with the wallet company, as did the Grove. I mean, the Alzheimer's Center and the Care Center fits in perfectly with their business model. And I'm sure, and also I believe it will be an asset to Sylvania Township, and I think the wallet company will do very well financially with that project. So I'm gonna leave it there for you,
Well,
okay?
thanks for taking the high road tonight and getting this thing figured out. Yeah, that's what's most important.
Absolutely. And I have, I still like the company a lot. Do you have any questions?
I don't.
Okay.
What do you have any ideas in terms of solutions, or?
I have no, I'm sure they can look around, they can find some additional parking there. Yeah, but,
I don't have a question for you, Doctor.
okay.
I have a question for Carleen, I think.
Sure.
Yep. Eventually, there will be a site plan review, right?
There has been on this already for
Already?
Lucas County, and yeah, in fact, we talked about parking in the very beginning, and it fits every
Well, I think
requirement that we have, like, does it exceed? It's just right at, okay.
Well, I'm sure that, I have no question, the parking requirements have been met by both the doctor. This is where you're putting something together. I'd like you guys to take a look, I think 5 visitor, you have a lot of parking places, mainly carports and garages. Maybe, I think there might be a valid point for visitors here. I would not like you to come out toward Holland, Sylvania. I think your screen there is very important to the community, but it looks like there is some area, I'd call it to the northeast, that might be able to be worked out. I like Neil's position with the fence. It may not be the best, Doctor. And I don't know if you can get, I can't tell from this site plan whether you can get a little more parking around the grove. But I'd like you to take a look at that. If you've already been through site plan approval, maybe you could get back with, well, first I'd like you to meet with the doctor, and then if you would, get back with Carleen. I don't know that this is a township zoning matter as much as a good neighbor, and it looks like you've been a really good neighbor to the doctor. But just because we're here, I would like you to meet with the doctor and let Carleen know what you intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, nobody signed up, so, we're going to close the hearing real quick on that. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, it's gonna be real quick. Also, with the new 54 apartment complex that they're planning on, if you see the way it's laid out, all right, if we've had problems having visitors go over to the Memory Center, the Grove, if they don't have parking in the back, and they have 5 parking spots available there for visitors and for employees, and I don't know how many employees they're planning on having there, but since it isn't a care facility as well, I'm certain it's not going to be just bare bones. But the only place to park is, even if we put a barrier in, put a fence in, did everything, they could walk through to the sidewalk in my front yard, and they could walk down. That would be the closest, that would be probably closer than the parking that they have by the Grove right now. That's going to be the most desirable parking. And during the holidays, when they have guests or whatever, I'll bet you anything, unless I chain that off, they're going to be using my parking lot. And by the way, we considered chaining it off. We decided not to do it at night. That would be the main entry, and it's, look, if they're visiting friends and they need a parking spot, they're going to park. And I just have one other thing. My assistant has noticed that there's been excessive parking in the Toledo Clinic building next door. And I don't know, you can see it on the aerials, and I'm not saying any of their employees or anyone else is parking there, but I'm just saying the density of those cars that are parked along there, is unusual, and that may be, again, overflow parking from the Grove. So they're taking and encroaching on that property as well right now. And of course, they have extra parking spots, but not too many, I don't. So I would like you to consider that as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Can you tell me how many employees are at the Grove?
Dedicated for the Grove, I would have to check with staff. We have 48 residents, not 60 there. I would want to check with staff.
50, 100? I mean, and I'm sure it's staffed 24 hours a day.
Correct,
Yeah.
it reduces overnight. I would guess about 25-ish.
Per staff? Or per shift, I should say,
No, total.
total. And how many do you expect for the new project, like you mentioned?
Around 10.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'd like to, at this time, like to close the public. There's nobody else signed in for this, so I'm assuming nobody else wanted to speak. So I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:51. And then we'll offer Resolution 18150 to approve a zone change request from C2 to R5 PUD located at 4230 Holland, Sylvania.
Was that a motion?
A motion, yes.
Second?
Call the roll, Mr. Genowine?
No.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. And then we have a public hearing for a zone change from R4 to R5 at 4220 North Holland, Sylvania Road. And I'd open that public hearing up at 6:52. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on behalf of that, for or against the project? All right, with that being said, I'll close the public hearing at 6:52. I'll offer Resolution 18-151 to approve a zone change request from R4 to R5 Residential PUD.
Second?
I'll call the roll, Mr. Genowine?
No.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. And then, that is it, I guess, for,
I have one more resolution.
oh, this is the legal action?
This is the legal action.
Yep.
Resolution 18149, authorization to file legal action in Lucas County Common Pleas Court to enforce the zoning resolution. The property is located at 3602 West Circle. The property owners, Michael Miller and Edith Miller, have been notified. In fact, we've been notifying them for close to 9 years to get the property in order. We've had a lot of promises. My zoning officer has worked extensively with the property owner. He's come into his office. We've given him deadline after deadline. We said, move one thing. Nothing's been moved. I went through on areas today and pictometry, and I looked to see that in 2004, the same car is parked in 2016, and Dean drove by last week, and the same car is still parked there, and there are actually a number of them, but they don't all show up. So there's quite a few. We've really been sympathetic to this gentleman, but the time has come for the township to get this. It backs up to the University Trail, and it's time to take this seriously. We have several properties that we'll be moving in on. One we're already moving in on, and I really want to get these under control and underway. So I would ask for you to pass this resolution.
I'll move resolution 18149, authorization to file legal action in Lucas County Common Pleas Court to enforce the zoning resolution.
Second?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine? Yes.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.
No, at this junction, I'd like to make a motion to go in executive session for pending and imminent court action in the fire department at 6:55.
And just for the public, we're not taking action.
Okay.
Do you have a second on that motion?
Second?
We'll call roll, Mr. Genowine? Yep. Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. Hey, Joe. All right, I'd like to make a motion to come back out of executive session at 7:07.
Second?
Call the roll, Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes, and for the record, we didn't take any action tonight. All righty, thanks.
Motion to adjourn?
Wait a minute.
Motion.
Motion adjourned?
Yeah. Second.
I moved.
Okay, Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. All right. I'll see you guys. Have a good night.